Hello and welcome to the big picture. For the last few years, the Controller and Auditor General has become the biggest bugbear of the government as it comes out with one audit report after another showing many of the government's policies in poor light and worse, raising serious questions about the transparency, accountability and even corruption. The extent of presumed or assumed losses which has been put out by the CAG are in unimaginable proportions, and these numbers have further added to the difficulty of the government. While everyone admits that CAG is not the last word, the controversy generated over the issue of how our natural resources should be distributed is a real issue which cannot be ignored. Many of the policies which have attracted criticism of being classic examples of crony capitalism also are under scrutiny. The government, however, has defended itself that the latest CAG report on coal block allocations is unfair and a more transparent and better process could not have been adopted. The jury is still out, not only on coal allocations, but also on the Delhi airport project as well as the ultra mega power projects, in which the CAG has found serious deficiencies in the implementation of the policies. Today, we will look at this entire issue while asking the question, is crony capitalism hindering policy making? To discuss this, I have with me Nilotpal Basu, CPI Central Committee member, Amitabh Mukhopadhyay, former former Director General of CAG, Nalin Kohli, BJP spokesman, and Mythili Bhusnurmath, consulting editor, Economic Times. Welcome to all of you. Nilotpal, you know these reports which have been coming one after the other for the last 2-3 years especially, they have been raising fundamental issues of governance. And the latest also raises fundamental issues of governance. But the problem is that every time it comes out, the government says CAG is not the last word.
See, that is the problem with the government. I think not the problem of the CAG, because the most controversial response was to the 2G spectrum audit by the CAG, and if we have to go by the final words of the highest court of this country, they have more or less upheld what the CAG has had stated, and in fact they have gone one step further, where they have pointed out that in our country natural resources were not defined, neither in the constitution nor in our statutory provisions. So they took pains to lay down what principles should define natural resources, and they also pointed out, which in fact was a major rebuff of the government's position, that natural resources are not owned by the government. It is held in trust by the government and it belongs to the people of this country.
Yes.
Therefore, its distribution has to be transparent.
Absolutely.
If the principle of public interest is to be upheld.
Transparency, fine. But the question is that the Supreme Court, there is a presidential reference before the Supreme Court. It has heard already the whole matter, and it is the judgment is pending. But the fact of the matter is that we are still not sure. Supreme Court came out with a judgment on 2G saying that auction is the best process.
Just give me 2 sentences. First of all, the government's affidavit itself, the government's petition itself in the review case states that government has willy-nilly accepted that there was 40,000 crores loss. And secondly, the floor price for the impending auction that the government has actually laid out, 14,000 crores, that will yield, a figure If the bidders are only bidding at the floor level, something around 1,50,000 or 60,000, and people are anticipating that it can go up to almost 3 lakh crores. That is the level of loss that the country would have suffered if the CAG would not have given this report, and there would not be such a furor in the parliament leading to this whole process.
Okay, and Nalin, coming to you, you know, the issue now is that it's very interesting. The government is saying that in the latest report, you know, we are looking at the entire CAG process, but when it comes to the specific on the coal allocation issue, for instance, the coal blocks, they say that, you know, they were handicapped to a certain extent in going into a bidding process or because the state governments were not willing to do that. Some of the state governments included your party state governments and even their government when they were in power in West Bengal. So this is one of the defense of the government. How do you explain this?
Two things. One, just for the record, I am a national executive member and I am the co-convener of the Policy Formulation Action Group.
Right.
But that's okay. I represent the party on debates. Girish, let's get back to each one. Let's pick up the strand from where Nilotpal left it. The very fact that the government has set a base price, which is of course lower than the TRI recommendation, negates the very argument what Kapil Sibal... Yes, I'm talking of 2G first, to finish that discussion.
Yes.
It negates the very defense of the government that Mr. Kapil Sibal forcefully was trying to put, that
The
it's a
zero
zero
loss.
loss. I mean, that's absolutely clear. Now let's move to the next one. In the, I think what we are seeing here, and let's look at it from a political perspective straight away, and then I'll come specifically to the answer on the state governments. Politically, if you look at it, every time a constitutional body, and in this case the CAG, does or comes up with anything that seems to go against the political will of the UPA government and the Congress party, you immediately find they start hitting out at the messenger and raising questions. So which is incorrect, because this is a constitutional body which is performing its task. And it's not a super constitutional body like the NEC.
Nalin, the same criticism used to be hurled against your government when you were in power.
Let us simply come to the fact
That you were attacking the constitutional bodies whenever they were very inconvenient with you.
I can say that with an element of authority, that when it comes to federalism, there is a letter on record from the left party chief minister of Kerala during the time when Mr. Yashwant Sinha was finance minister, where he has thanked Mr. Yashwant Sinha for being fair and not at all encroaching upon the powers of the state. So I think we really need no certificates from at least the Congress party. Certainly not, and especially a party and a government that is embroiled in such mammoth...
Coming to
the coal allocation, let's understand the issue. And I'll answer the state thing too. You have clearly in 2004 a policy, a decision that you will go for basically auctioning.
Right.
The secretary and the ministry is ready with that. The Department of Legal Affairs says that it is possible to do so, and this is what Arun Jaitley ji and Sushma Swaraj ji have in their joint statement said.
Coal secretary
Yes,
also.
they say it. They say, but you know, the department, the PMO immediately reverses that and says there are hurdles here. And then you have an inordinate delay of 25 months and 8 years.
One of the hurdles is the state governments.
Thank you very much. Let's come to the state governments also. On the state governments issue, a defense is being taken that, you see, the recommendations came from the state governments and so we were unable to do so.
Absolutely.
Let's come to this. First of all, recommendations are not the final authority. By the same principle, the Under Secretary to Government of India can make a recommendation and the minister should be bound by that.
So are you trying to tell me that the government of India at that time when the state governments came up with this proposal or suggestions or recommendation, whatever we call it, they should have ignored it?
No, I'm merely making you it. A recommendation may come. The merits may be seen, but there may be the final decision rests with the final authority. In the case, the minister. Second is a party. No, let me finish this, Girish. The point I'm making is a government that is repeatedly encroaching on the federal structure and not listening to the state governments on a whole variety of issues, including their due amounts which are due to them, is now giving us lessons about following the federal principle. I think this is doublespeak,
Okay.
and this is
I
nothing
think
but
I need to get in
We challenge the Congress party to come out with the letters of Buddhadev Bhattacharya and Nirupam Sen, where we have been very, very clear that we want a greater role of the state governments, because actually
In allocating coal blocks?
coal blocks, and to for a transparent procedure to be adopted, so that the state's leverage in attracting investment could be reinforced, because it is on the one hand.
One last point to add to this very point,
You're
Girish.
admitting that you wanted the state government to have more power in allocation of coal blocks and not the
A
central.
role in the allocation, because you see again, for all these years, so far as West Bengal is concerned, we have been shouting that there should be freight equalization, because of the policies adopted by the central government over all these years had immensely hamstrung the capacity of the state to leverage its natural resources.
Nalin, quickly.
Well, yeah, just one sentence,
Yeah.
and I just want to say, if you will even go into more details, you will find that not all the recommendations of the state governments were also accepted by the very ministry that today is running behind the alibi that we were following state instructions.
Right. Amitabh, about the CAG, the problem which, is being pointed out is that at a particular point of time, it's assumed, the assumptions which it makes as far as losses are concerned, as presumed losses are concerned, is huge. And then suddenly when it comes out with the report that it would have come down some 10 times. See, this creates some kind of a trust deficit in the CAG also, in the way of the functioning of the CAG also.
No, I think that is being played out and played up against them. The figures have come down after a draft report.
Right.
That draft report, how it
How
was
can
leaked,
there be
how
such
it was not,
huge difference
we
between
don't
a
have
draft report and a final report?
No, the difference was simply that earlier that the scope of that audit included the state government mines as well, the Coal India mines as well, the state government mines as well. And then it was felt that it is best to keep these two issues. There's a lot of issues of efficiency, a lot of issues of where the mineral wealth of many state governments is actually being taken out by trucks and so on. But keep those aside. Let us just concentrate on the issue of giving out of open cast coal blocks by Coal India from 2004, where there is a very clear policy, and giving it out on an auction basis. Now, I want to say something which I think is very important for us to appreciate. Manmohan Singh is being pilloried for having held that charge of the
Right.
coal ministry at that time. But I think it's important to remember that it's only after he took charge that the policy of auctioning
Was discussed.
and decided. And by 2006, they even had the law ministry's approval to an amendment being moved, and
Right.
they were
But
in position.
For the next
But
2 years, nothing happened.
No, till today, nothing has
Nothing has
happened.
happened.
Nothing has been auctioned till today.
Absolutely.
The modus operandi has taken them till 2011 to decide, and even till today, not a single block has been auctioned. So, Manmohan Singh must be lauded for arriving at the right solution for the kind of cronyism that was going on at the time of 2004. But the problem with him was that after that, he should have had the courage to fight the mafia and see to it that these auctions actually started happening.
Okay, that's
I must say that Tagore has a very, very interesting phrase that he used, অন্যায় যে করে আর অন্যায় যে সহে মোর ঘৃণা তারে যেন তৃণা সমদহে. That is,
Translate.
whoever is perpetrating a crime and whoever is suffering that in the pursuit of good and in trying to do down bad, my anger, my hatred should be able to burn that dry grass.
Okay.
That is Tagore's sentiment.
Okay. Let me get Mythili into the discussion. Mythili, my question. You heard what my panelists here have said. Now, my question to you, when you look at these reports, when you look at what has happened in the last 8 years, when it comes to coal, or even the other thing about the Delhi International Airport, we will come to that. But when you take all these things in totality, do you think that bad faith drove the government towards these policies, or was it good faith which created these problems?
Well, Girish, what I look at it as a journalist, as a citizen of this country, I think what distresses me most of all is that in this entire process, the CAG seems to have become very politicized. If you see the arguments being made both by two of your panelists and by the political class in general, what is unfortunate is that the CAG, which is a constitutional body, and we have very few independent constitutional bodies like the CAG, the CEC, these are bodies that we should really treasure. And by attacking them, we are kind of debasing these institutions. And I think that will be something that we will regret for a very long time.
Right.
Because when you politicize these things, you stop seeing them as an auditor of the government commenting on whether the government has carried out its governance functions properly. Because one can argue whether auction was the right way or whether allocation was the right way. But what is clearly seen in the CAG reports is that there was a complete lack of transparency. And here I would like to read just one paragraph from the CAG report, if you will permit me.
Yeah,
it
please
says that in the case of the Rampia mines, there were 108 applicants and only 2 applicants were scheduled for making a presentation before the screening committee. But subsequently, the screening committee made allocations to 6. Now, when you have called only 2, how can you allocate to 6? I think these are the kind of things that are far more damaging for the long-term governance of this country, far more than the individual report itself. And that is why I think the ordinary citizen is so concerned, because if you keep rubbishing the CAG, you keep rubbishing the CEC, then there's not very much hope for the future of this country.
Absolutely. Mythili, my question to you was whether these decisions were driven by good faith or bad faith. Anyway, how far crony capitalism have played a role in this, and how far it has been playing a role in the last 20 years or 22 years that we have seen the economic liberalization process in this country. We'll discuss all this. We need to go into a short break now. Please keep watching. We'll be back very soon. Welcome back. We are discussing the CAG reports which have been recently released on coal, Delhi International Airport and UMPP, and asking the question, is crony capitalism hindering policy making in this country? Nilotpal, Amitabh made a very interesting point. You people have all been cornering, and the Prime Minister, Dr.Manmohan Singh, he says that it was he actually put things on the path, on the rails.
You see, I have great regards for Mr. Mukhopadhyay, but the point is, we are not discussing integrity of the individual. We are discussing the integrity of the process over which he is presiding. So subjectively, what was his role is not the concern to the people who are being denied, say, food entitlements, and when they are being told that, no, you cannot be supplied with 2 rupees a kilo of rice or wheat. I mean, to him, who is responsible is a different story altogether. But 1,86,000 rupees, crores of rupees have been lost by the public exchequer, which would have gone for sponsoring this program for 5 years. That is what is, I think, to the common citizen more relevant.
Yes, Nalin.
I'd like to say that, by the same argument, I think it just simply proves what this country and various stakeholders are saying. Complete policy paralysis. I mean, you actually want to initiate something, and if you consider that laudatory, which is okay, you gloss over the system being abused, misused for 8 years. I mean, I think that is phenomenal. And if that is not policy paralysis, adding to what Mr. Bosu is saying, what else is? I mean, I think it's shocking.
Was it policy paralysis which hindered this?
It is policy paralysis
Was it just
and
policy paralysis which
capitalism.
hindered this?
No, I don't think the policy was decided.
The
policy was decided in 2004, 2006, even the lawmakers.
Implementation paralysis.
Not just implementation. As I said, it is a lack of courage to fight the mafia. Let me tell you, this has nothing to do with whether you believe in capitalism or you believe in socialism. Even when coal was nationalized in 1971, at that time, there was a lot of cronyism in the private industries trying to corner coal through the government by getting it nationalized. And at that time, who was hit? It was the miners who were hit. 50,000 miners were retrenched within the year that coal was nationalized. And casual workers who, the socialist camp would call blacklegs were brought in. And the coal, railways and power, these form a triangle, a lifeline of the country. Railways was the biggest buyer of coal, and it set a price through its own inefficiencies. The power sector, through its own inefficiencies, set a price of coal which was very low. So Coal India came to a very, very sorry pass in terms of its viability and so on. So what I'm saying is that even at the time of nationalization, there was a lot of cronyism, there was a lot of interpenetration between industry on the one hand, companies and the government. Similarly today, at that time in 71, this whole cronyism hit the working class. Today it's hit the entire nation in terms of the kind of prices of...
This is a very interesting linkage. I just want to quickly point out that, you see, in fact, this whole policy of allocation of these coal blocks for the, particularly the power sector, was also part of the reforms of the power sector itself, where the independent power producers wanted three concessions out of the government. One was cheap, low interest public sector financial institution loans. Second was dedicated coal linkage. And third one was of cheap import of manufactured electrical power equipments, and all these counts government has conceded to them, and as a result of that, power sector has also suffered and our indigenous facilities have also suffered.
Mythili, when we look at all these things, when we look at the CAG report, there's so much discussion happening now about the policies. Certainly, there are some voices here and there about nationalization, but that is not the solution. What is the solution to this present problem now then?
I think reports like the CAG report clearly bring out what is the way forward. First of all, I think you must have transparency. While policy is very much the government's domain, I think whatever policy the government decides on, it must be completely transparent. Issues like tweaking the norms after the bid has been won, those are clearly unfair. And I would agree entirely with Amitabh when he says that crony capitalism is not something new. We had crony socialism in the past. In fact, the license permit Raj perhaps had much more of cronyism. The only difference now is that we have, because of the spread of greater awareness, because you have a CAG which is more active, I think there is hope that things will change. But cronyism has always been part of the Indian system. I think greater literacy, things like right to information and the CAG are going to make a big change, and hopefully things will improve in the future.
Okay. Nalin, it's very interesting that your party is now talking of crony capitalism. When you were in power, you were accused of, starting this whole process.
Who is the accuser?
Huh?
Who is the accuser?
Nilotpal, you want to say what?
Who is the accuser? I mean, let's get down to this. I mean, actually,
Nalin
I think the point
was actually getting away with. I clearly remember Arun Jaitley was the law minister.
Not
when
Arun
this
Jaitley,
CAG report on the coffin came up during Kargil war, his comment was, we need lieutenant generals, not comptroller and auditor general. So, I mean, the record of both the parties, so far as attacking constitutional institutions are concerned, are equally gory.
That is fantastically said. And Mr. Boshu, if I may also go by the same logic, within West Bengal also in the election, Amitabh has been raising many points. Let's leave it out, but let's look at a sustained attack.
No problem. No problem.
That's not the point.
That is not the discussion
the
point.
issue of crony capitalism. When BJP raises it,
yes,
there are
hold on.
serious
Hold on. Look,
eyebrows raised on that.
No, I want to make this clear. we stand, and I think Mythili has been raising some very valid points. I think the point at the end of the day is, what are we looking for? We are looking for an economic progress. We are looking for an economic growth. We are looking for economic policy that is transparent. Obviously, we are standing for growth of the economy on market terms. But that does not mean that you abuse, misuse, and therefore twist the system, manipulate the system by paralysis or by indecision or even by malified decision to ensure that it goes to favor people on undue basis and cause loss to the public exchequer. That is not acceptable.
No, I will just add, it will be wrong to say that in the yesteryears there was crony capitalism.
Crony
Presently
socialism.
also, but
Mythili
there is a
says they are crony
fundamental
socialism.
difference. Today, crony capitalism is being legitimized in policy terms.
Right.
The government has decided or embarked on a policy course which has built-in factor for really buttering the cronies on the right side of their bread. And that is precisely what is being brought out by all these CAG audits and the subsequent intervention by the judiciary. I think, therefore, I mean, we cannot say that in the yesteryears also crony capitalism is there. And the entire international experience
Nalin, I
also
want to
shows
quickly-
that the policy
I want to come
itself
in.
today legitimizes cronism.
The point I'm saying, moving away from that and to the point about
Quickly.
the charge coming that the BJP or the NDA used to also attack, I certainly reject that charge, because I think the sustained attacks that have taken place in this government, not only on the CNAG, as Mythili pointed out, on the CEC, on the Election Commission, it has been done on the,
That has been done by your government
No, no,
also.
hang
Both
on.
CAG and
Hang on.
CEC
On
have been the
issues,
targets during the
I
government.
want to make one thing clear on issues. You may have disagreement, and I think in a democracy, it's
your
okay.
party has attacked
Hang on.
individuals.
But, no, but when we take the fight on principles, I think you cannot run down, especially a government which is creating
Okay,
super
quickly,
constitutional
if you
bodies
finish your point,
like the
later.
NSC. How can you, run down the CAG?
Amitabh, last words to you.
You know, I feel that clarity is required on
Do
a
you
couple of things.
let me ask you a question. Now that all these reports are there, everybody is discussing about it, crony capitalism, policy paralysis, implementation paralysis and things like do you think anything good can come out of this now?
Oh yes, a lot of good can come out of it if we stop questioning the mandate of the CAG, which is clearly there, because these are not even reports on policy. It's about implementation of policy that the government has already decided.
Actually, the CAG is being questioned that they cannot look into the policies.
Yeah, but these three reports that were tabled on the 17th are not about policy at all. They are not assailing policy. They are assailing the implementation. They are saying that the policy which was decided by this very government has not been followed in each of these cases. Number two, I want to also talk about the fact that the defense of the government is now moving towards, oh, well, this will be discussed by PAC and then we will give all answers there. Now, what I read into that is that, of course, PAC is a very, very entrenched system that we have. But what I read into this kind of talk about it is that they wish to take this out as quickly as possible from the public domain. They want to take it out of the House. They want to take it out of the media, and they want to, because PAC is always held in camera. So you simply take all this and closet it with the PAC. I'm not saying I've served the PAC for many, many years, and I have the highest regard, and I think it's a great institution, and it must look at these reports. But the UK government or the UK Parliament has
completely running out of time.
convention
Quickly.
of discussing PAC reports, CAG reports in the House.
On the House.
We need to continue.
But last
And
word.
also, the government
Completely.
has not only used PAC at the time of the 2G spectrum, because certain policy issues also came up under question. The formation of the JPC, which could also go into the policy aspects, were sought to be denied in the first place. Therefore, I think there has to be a public debate in the House, and at least the Prime Minister owes it to the nation to come out clearly with a statement how all this happened under his
Okay, Nilotpal,
charge.
we have completely run out of time. Tomorrow the Parliament resumes, and we will wait and watch keenly how the government will react to this, and whether, as Nilotpal is saying, the Prime Minister will come up and make a statement and make his position clear on this. The whole nation will be watching. Thanks to all my guests. Thank you very much. Mythili, thank you very much. Nilotpal, Basu, Nalin Kohli, Amitabh Mukhopadhyay. Please keep watching. We'll come back with another issue on the big picture tomorrow at the same time.